Most people don't know this, but the esoteric health movement was born out of the pandemic. We all know that Pfizer, the vaccine companies, walked away with billions of dollars. They acted above the law. You couldn't sue them for vaccine injury. I'm going to share with you a story that I saw in real life. When I was getting my surgery done for fixing the structures of my nose, I was seated beside another patient who was talking to the doctor, and there was only a curtain separating us, so I could hear the conversation. The doctor asked her about her frozen shoulder. Now, at the time, I didn't know what frozen shoulder was. It's essentially a musculoskeletal injury that prevents free movement of the shoulder joint. The doctor asked her an interesting question. He asked her, which side did she get her COVID shot on? And she said it was the side where she has the frozen shoulder. What he remarked was, first, that he's been seeing more frozen shoulder injuries than ever before, which that in itself is suspicious. But he also said that the shoulder injury, the frozen shoulder, always happens on the side in which the patient got the COVID-19 shot. Here's another place where I lost trust in the health institutions. Back when the pandemic was still raging, there was this observation made that the black community had higher rates of complication from this disease. Further investigation led to the finding that it was because the black community had higher rates of obesity, and that obesity was driving complications with COVID-19. But that's not what was pushed out. What they pushed out was it's because of systemic racism. They could have used the opportunity to chart a path towards a healthier society. They did not do this. Instead, they drove us apart and made it about race rather than actually helping people. All they had to do to reduce the complication rates and even the mortality rates of COVID-19 was to attack obesity. If Americans could just become less obese, many more people would have survived the pandemic. But that's not what they focused on. Instead, they focused on pharmaceutical intervention. They focused on a vaccine that enriched them and made the pharma companies billions. And so the people felt betrayed. We looked up to the government for guidance, but instead received nothing. And so we looked to each other, and a grassroots movement was born, which was the esoteric health movement. As a recent graduate of one of the best biosciences program in the US and possibly the world, I was torn between trusting the scientific institutions and the scientific method. For me, science was always about asking questions and not about blind faith in authority. So I tried to find answers for myself about my health, because in the end of the day, the only person responsible for my health is myself. Not the government, not doctors, not the CDCs, and certainly not health insurance or the pharma companies. Soon, I found others like myself who had turned away from the consensus and instead to each other. It was around this time that I started making my first YouTube videos to spread the message of esoteric health and to reveal some of the lies that we have been fed. I was one of the first to talk about estrogens in the water supply and that you should be using a shower filter. I was one of the first to talk about tallow to be used as a skincare product. I was one of the first to start talking about fluoride in the water and why you should use a reverse osmosis filter or a carbon filter to protect yourself. I was also speaking of using saturated fats in your diet like butter and eggs, despite what the doctors might say. What are the core tenets of the esoteric health movement? Well, the first is that don't trust authorities blindly. The second is embrace traditions and time-tested methods towards health. And the third is to embrace self-experimentation and trying to figure things out for yourself. And this brings us to the current timeline, the decade of divergence. My objective with this channel was always to make the esoteric more accessible. And I want to announce to you quite happily that we have won. On the political front, it looks like Red 40 might be on track to getting banned. Very cool. Second, if you didn't know this, baby formula is actually required by law to have seed oils in them. And that's under investigation and might also get banned. And thirdly, there's an investigation going into fluoride in the water, and that too might be removed. Now, here's an important point I'd like to make. If you're worried that health is becoming political, guess what? Health was always political. It's not a bad thing. This is the way change happens. From a cultural standpoint, what are we seeing? I actually saw this in real life. When I was in the locker room in my university gym a couple months ago, I overheard a conversation between a couple young guys. And they were talking about where to get food. It was late in the day. They said that they were going to go to B-Dubs, Buffalo Wild Wings, for those who don't know. They said that they would go there because they didn't use seed oils. Now, I don't know if this is true, but the fact that they are even speaking of seed oils is a conversation that would not happen, could not happen 2 years ago. And we see that some companies, some fast food companies like Steak and Shake are moving from using seed oils to tallow. Now, what does this mean? It's possible that other chains will start to follow. McDonald's used to use tallow for their fries. They stopped because of a psyop. They stopped because Procter & Gamble funded the AHA, the American Heart Association, to convince the boomers that seed oil was healthy and the tallow was not. And this caused a change in public perception, which is why McDonald's decided to switch from tallow to seed oils. So if the public perception shifts again, there's no reason why McDonald's wouldn't shift from seed oils back to tallow. So in the end of the day, these companies, they will just follow the trend. So it is up to us to make sure that the culture is correct. Other crazy observations. In Walmart, you can find fluoride-free toothpaste. Back in the day, when I say back in the day, I mean like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you could only find fluoride-free toothpaste in Whole Foods or like high-end chains, or you'd have to search for it online. But nowadays, Walmart carries it. And not just that, you can reliably find products, skincare products, which are not toxic, like Dr. Squatch. You can find Dr. Squatch at Walmart. Again, pretty good product, no toxins. How long before Walmart start carrying tallow balm? How long before Walmart carries methylene blue? At the end of the day, this is a huge victory for us, and we should be proud of how far our movement has come. But here's the thing, whenever a movement starts to gain traction, there are always bad actors who will try to use this for their own selfish ends. Let's look at an easy example. Liver King. Back in the day, he was one of the first to talk about raw meat, talking about raw eggs, raw milk. He was speaking of spending time in the sun. He was speaking about an ancestral diet. All very good things, all messages which I can get behind. However, this was essentially a marketing stunt. He didn't really believe in any of these things because at the end of the day, he was promoting this message and using his physique as proof, but he was using steroids to get his physique. And he was lying about it. And once he was exposed, what did he do? He didn't have any shame. He just kept on doing the same thing, promoting the same message. Well, obviously his results did not come from those methods. It came from the anabolics. So to be clear, I'm not against using anabolics. You do whatever you want. I'm against lying. I'm against lying about the source of your results. Now here's the thing. I focus on Liver King because it's such a stark example of doing wrong. But here's the truth, right? Many influencers, many who you probably follow and trust, are also using steroids, also doing it covertly, and you just don't know. You just buy their supplement because you think that you'll get the results which they have, but actually their results come from the anabolics. Now let's talk about supplements in general. 90% of supplements are garbage. They are a waste of your money. Just save your money. Just focus on the basics. There is an esoteric arms race going on. Every influencer wants to be the first to talk about the next supplement. We have influencers who are talking about using deer antler velvet to boost their testosterone. They're talking about colostrum to increase their IGF-1 to hopefully get taller. They're speaking of using pine pollen in order to, again, increase their testosterone. All this stuff is bullshit. Highly expensive supplements for almost negligible gains and possibly side effects which are not well studied. The reason people buy supplements is nothing to do with the science behind them. The science behind them is usually very shoddy. It's all to do with the copywriting. Each supplement company has dedicated copywriters whose entire job is to write these words, these scripts, which convince you that this is the next thing that you need. And if you just had the supplement, you would have the dream outcome. And even with messaging, different creators within the health space are on the quest to find the next controversial take, the next hot take about health in order to convince you that by following them, you are at the cutting edge of health, and by following them, you are given this advantage over others. The truth is, if you focus on the fundamentals, you're probably going to be ahead of everybody anyway. The fundamentals haven't changed. The human being as a biological entity hasn't changed in the past 5,000 years, probably much more than that. And the fundamentals, again, are sleep, exercise, and diet. If you are not optimized in these three, then what's the point of supplements? And the second phenomenon coming out of health is the cult-like personalities. Things like Brian Johnson trying to start an actual cult.
So don't die is a religion, don't die is an economic system, don't die is a political system, don't die is an ethical, moral, and social system. That we have, let's say we have something like $1 trillion under management, where people take their savings and they put it into a don't die managed fund, where we can move money in markets to actually move towards things that push towards don't die. But basically trying to build a nation state and a religion and a social movement in like a 2-year time period.
I get why people have said you're obsessed with Joseph Smith and you want to be your own Joseph Smith. So that I didn't understand before. And
I actually, it's not Joseph Smith. My competitor is Jesus.
The first tenet of the esoteric health movement is don't blindly trust authorities. It means don't trust the CDC, don't trust the pharma companies, don't trust the government, but it also means don't trust influencers. Includes individuals among us, people in among us. Fuck, got distracted. And this includes myself. Everything I say, you should verify and can test on your own. So here's the big question. Who do you trust? Who's left that you can actually trust? The answer is you need to actually have a filter. You need to learn philosophy. This is why philosophy is important. You need to be able to detect doublespeak. Doublespeak is a term invented by George Orwell, and what it means is you're using language not to communicate, but rather to obfuscate. The topic of doublespeak is something which I want to explore in depth. This is not the time or place, but there's one point which I want you to carry with you. You are not dumb. You are not stupid. If somebody who's in a position of authority is saying things in such a way that you're thinking, I don't fully understand it, but I trust it, it means they're using doublespeak. You should be able to understand the arguments being made. You should be able to understand the words and ideas being presented clearly. If somebody is not taking the effort to make their ideas succinct, understandable, and digestible, either they're being lazy and you should not respect them, or they're actively trying to deceive you, in which case you should not trust them. And just as a side note, if somebody says that they're competing with Jesus, I'm not inclined to trust them.